I'm State Representative Mike Fryberg. I'm the chief author of the End of Life Options Act. I really appreciate you being here. Today is a really momentous day. It's the first day in my knowledge that we will be not just hearing but voting on the End of Life Options Act in the House Health Committee. So we were here last March when I introduced the bill, and I've been at press events to introduce this bill many times, but I'd like to take a few minutes to acknowledge the brave advocates who are with us in spirit. People like Dee Wells, who was up here with me last year but has since died of ovarian cancer without the benefit of medical aid and dying. I also want to acknowledge Karen Warren, Marianne Turnbull, Dana Nelson, Bert Riskdahl, who advocated for this option literally from their deathbeds. And I thank all the Minnesotans who continue to advocate so that others won't need to suffer as their loved ones did. When this bill passes, it will be due to their persistence and their sacrifice. And finally, thank you to the 23 co-authors of this bill, particularly Representative Heather Edelson, who has also put a lot of work into this bill. Now, the End of Life Options Act would authorize medical aid in dying. The main criteria have remained unchanged since I first introduced the bill in 2015. To qualify for medical aid in dying, a person must be an adult, so they have to be 18 years of age or over. They have to be diagnosed with a terminal illness with a prognosis of 6 months or less to live, and they could be eligible for hospice still. They have to have the mental capacity to make healthcare decisions and provide informed consent, so people with dementia do not qualify for it. They have to have the ability to self-administer the medication, so injections or infusions are prohibited. And in addition, 2 providers, at least one of whom has to be a physician, must evaluate the patient and agree that they meet the criteria. My bill has protections built in for both patients and providers, and absolutely nobody is required to participate. This is an individual decision. 10 states and Washington, D.C. authorize medical aid in dying, and we have more than 60 years worth of data and experience showing that the laws work as designed. 24 years of that are in Oregon alone. So this is an important issue of bodily autonomy. I'm proud to author it. Today's speakers can explain why Minnesotans support the End of Life Option Act and why we need to pass this law this year. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Nancy Udin. Thank you for being here.
My name is Nancy Udin. My husband Jim and I live in Corcoran. This is my story and why I'm testifying in support of HF 1930. My life changed on November 30th, 2022, when I had a car accident caused by a seizure. I had never had a seizure before, and I don't remember anything between the accident and waking up in North Memorial Hospital. They found I had a brain mass, and I asked for a referral to Mayo Clinic. They ultimately diagnosed me with glioblastoma. This is the most aggressive terminal brain cancer. Even with standard treatment care, it has a very grim prognosis with a median survival of 15 months. My family and I have already endured brain surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, and I currently use this Optune device 90% of the time to target cancer cells. But this is all treatment, and it is not a cure. I promised my family that I would fight this ugly disease until there's no hope left, and my death is inevitable. So if there are no more treatment options, then I deserve more death options. I'm not afraid of death, but I am afraid of how I will die. I walked my mother and my brother to the end of their lives. They both died beautiful, painless death, and that's what I want. I had no choice of the cause of this disease, the cause of my death, and currently I have no choice over the slow and painful death that most glioblastoma patients endure as their organs slowly shut down and they experience seizures, painful headaches, delirium, blindness, paralysis. While I've always supported the idea of dying on one's own terms, it is now very real and urgent to me personally. I don't have time for long debates. This bill has been in front of the Minnesota legislature for 10 years already. It's time to act. As I imagine the end of my life, I would like to be able to say my goodbyes and go peacefully. I'm thankful that we have hospice as an option. I will use it for the maximum comfort I can. But if it's not enough in the end, I want the option to die gently in my sleep, just like my mom and brother. I want to be surrounded by my lovely family who is in the audience today. Not only do they want me to have choices at the end of my life, they also want to have choices at that time in their life too. As a terminally ill patient, I beg you to do something now to provide the compassionate choices to those who qualify. The ability to end their life peacefully and painlessly, surrounded by their loved ones. The safeguards of this bill are significant. There have been 0 reports of abuse in the 10 states in Washington, D.C. where the law is passed. And with that argument resolved, this should be a personal decision. The Minnesota legislature has made bodily autonomy a priority. Well, this is the final act of autonomy that any of us will ever have. Thank you for listening, and please, please, please pass the End of Life Options Act this year. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jeff McManus, and I live in Woodbury with my wife and 2 children. I never imagined myself as a spokesman for a piece of legislation, or even less speaking at a press conference, but here I am. My story begins in September 2022. I was up north with my brothers on a boys' weekend, and I developed a bowel obstruction. After a whirlwind of tests, MRIs, colonoscopies, biopsies, etc., I was diagnosed with stage 4 incurable, inoperable, metastatic adenocarcinoma of the small intestine, which has since spread throughout my belly, the peritoneum. 13 months ago, they told me I had 12 months to live. That news came as a pretty big shock to all of us, a state of disbelief. We moved through the stages, and I think we're mostly at acceptance these days. I've been fortunate to have access to great care. I'm grateful to Mayo and Minnesota Oncology for helping me maximize and optimize the time I have left. With successful chemotherapy every 2 weeks, I've done 26 rounds so far. My most recent prognosis has me living into 2025. That's good. Well, the side effects of cancer and chemo can be difficult. I fight through them, try not to complain, and try to make the best of the time I have left. But even with my awesome medical team, my options are really limited. I'll never be cancer-free or in remission. At some point, the chemo will stop being effective, and my cancer will continue spreading. I don't want a long, painful, drawn-out end. I didn't pick this road, but it's the road I'm on, and I want to decide when I've had enough. I never really thought about medical aid and dying before I got sick. Does anyone? I was frustrated by the fact Minnesota does not allow terminally ill people like me the option of a peaceful death. This isn't a new idea. As alluded to, 10 states allow it, some for more than 2 decades. This is not a partisan issue. I'm a lifelong Republican. My Republican friends agree with me on this position. In fact, I've only had one friend say they were against it, and he's a Democrat. Every one of us is going to die. We all have a stake in the outcome here. I'm not here to convince anyone that my way is more right than theirs. I simply want the freedom to decide for myself without the government interfering. I'm hoping that today the committee members will support the End of Life Options Act so this can finally pass after 10 long years. I don't have time to wait, neither do the other dying Minnesotans. For us, this request is very urgent and very personal. It's very urgent, it's very personal. The time to act is now. Thank you.
Hi there all. Jeff, thank you for that. Before I start, I just want to point out that this is probably the most important bill to every Minnesotan because every Minnesotan's going to die. So every Minnesotan should care about this bill. My name is Joanne Roberts. I am a retired hospice and palliative medicine physician. I practiced about 30 years in Everett, Washington, and I had strong opinions about this bill. I sat vigil at deathbeds for about 500 people, and I worked with about 5,000 people at the end of their lives. And when I did that, I believed that our palliative care could heal the pain and the spiritual pain and the emotional pain that people often suffer at the end of life. Because I believed that, I was a strong opponent when the similar bill went to the voters in Washington in 2008. They passed it by about 60% out there. I was a big opponent of it, and I'm here to tell you today that I was wrong. I was wrong, and my experience in Washington and my experience myself has helped me to convince myself that I was wrong. So, in Washington and in Oregon, which passed its bill in 1997, medical aid in dying has been used sparingly, it's been used compassionately, and it's been used thoughtfully. Each person who's been enrolled in the program has had complete agency, no coercion by anyone, families or doctors. They've all had imminently terminal diseases. Advanced cancers, ALS were the most common that we saw. And families were involved. It was a very loving event, lots of people surrounding the bedside. The dying process was peaceful, everything I saw after 2008. So it was really kind of a non-issue. In fact, in Washington and in Oregon, less than 0.5% of people who die use this option. And well over 90% of people who do use this option are in hospice, so they work together, and they work together beautifully. And the laws out there are just about identical to the law that's proposed here. Now, today I'm here with my own terminal disease, so I'm amongst this group. And I have a pre-leukemia, and it's likely that my suffering at the end of my life will be fairly brief and uncomplicated, and I probably won't partake of this option myself. But as a person who has death on my horizon and who has seen death, and having seen the law play out in Washington and other states, I feel I should be able to make my own decisions about my death, and I feel that Minnesotans no longer should be denied the option to do the same. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to take questions if anyone has any.
Representative, sounds like you have the votes in committee and on the floor.
I'm certainly optimistic. I haven't done a whip total or anything like that, but I believe it'll pass.
And why is that?
I think there's, like I said, I think there's support for it. We have something like 25 co-authors in the House. It's consistent with the legislation that advances bodily autonomy that we've already considered this year. I just think there's a lot of support for this both among my caucus within the House and among Minnesotans in general. We did there was a state fair survey that showed, I think, over 70% of support for this. It's passed by referendum in states that have a referendum process overwhelmingly. I think once people hear more about this, they come on board with it, as the doctor who just testified did.
Why are you bringing this up now as opposed to waiting for the session?
That was a decision made by Chair Liebling, so it wasn't up to me. My understanding is she wants to give this a full hearing, make sure there is enough time for everyone. She's allowing anyone who to testify on it who wants to, and there's a lot of interest in this. So things get pretty hectic during the session. So this is a process that can be used. It's not used very much, but it does follow the rules, and we'll be able to have a full hearing of it. We'll be able to consider amendments. We'll be able to hear from Minnesotans both in support of this and opposed to it. So it's going to be it's going to be a very thorough hearing, and I think that's the right way to do it.
What are you hearing from across the aisle?
I know I can't really speak for them super well, but I think as the second gentleman who spoke said, he's a Republican and he supports this. I think if you do, the polling that's out there shows that Republicans support this as well. I think sometimes it takes a little while for elected officials to catch up to where the public is. I'm hopeful that they will on this as well.
Are there any big changes you're making to the bill today? There's a delete all amendment at the beginning.
Yeah, we've received some feedback from various stakeholders over the last year and actually just over the last few days as well. So this incorporates the feedback we've received from them, but the basic principles of the bill are the same. The criteria that you have to use to take advantage of medical aid in dying are the same. All the safeguards are still in place, but there are some kind of more technical changes that are included.
What makes the landscape different this time around? This is a bill, some version of this has been introduced by you over the past decade. What's different now?
Well, I don't believe this is a partisan issue, but I do think, having a pro-choice majority in the House and the Senate certainly helps its chances. I don't think anything's guaranteed in this process, but we're gonna push this as far forward as we can, and I'm really hopeful that it's gonna pass this year, that this will be the year for it. I think we had a monumental session last year and passed very meaningful legislation, and a lot of legislation that's consistent with this legislation, frankly. We prioritized bodily autonomy, and that's what this does. At the last moment, people can exercise their bodily autonomy.
Do you think you have the votes in the Senate?
I'm not an expert in Senate, in the views of senators. I'm hopeful that we will. So we're gonna keep working, and we're gonna advance it in the House, I hope, is my hope today, and we'll keep working on the Senate as well. I think we will have the votes.
Your safeguards measure up to what the Minnesota Medical Association requires to kind of give their approval?
The Minnesota Medical Association does not take a position on this bill. They are neutral on it. There are many individual doctors who support this bill. The Senate author of the bill is a doctor herself. So, you know, this is very consistent with medical practice. The experience from the other states shows that it works and that it's used by a very narrow amount of people who are dying, and that the safeguards serve their intended purpose. So I think it's something many doctors support, and it's consistent with medical practice.
Opponents at a press conference just before this criticized a no residency requirement in the bill. I mean, could you talk about that? Why
Yeah.
isn't one?
Sure. Their residency requirements have been in place in some of the other states that allow this. They've been challenged on a constitutional basis. I think that violates the Interstate Commerce Clause, and in 2 states they've removed the residency requirement. So there's a legal question, but beyond that, we don't, just kind of on a general principle, we don't put residency requirements in place for medical procedures, and that's what this is a medical procedure. I think having a residency requirement could make it difficult for people who live on the border. So it's not, a residency requirement is not something I support and not something I think should be in the bill.
To add to that, do you see Minnesota standing as a sort of medical hub as a pro for this legislation in your view?
Absolutely. We have world-class medical facilities in Minnesota, and I think they are very well equipped to administer this law, and it's worked very well in other states that don't have Mayo clinics in them, for example.
Given State Senator John Hoffman's opposition to the bill and the Democrats only have a 1-vote majority in the Senate, do you know of any Republicans in the Senate that would support this?
I think there's a potential there. I mean, I haven't spoken to them personally, but from what I understand, there is a potential that there could be some crossover support for this.
And in the House, do you have Republican votes?
It remains to be seen. So, you know, we do have a majority in both chambers. But as I said, this shouldn't be a partisan issue. Republicans do support this bill, as we heard from the testimony today.
What's the timetable? You know, that passes this committee, are there more committees?
Yeah, it'll need to be heard in a few different committees. Once session starts, assuming it passes in the Health Committee today, the committee report will be processed on the floor. I believe the motion's gonna be to refer it to the Public Safety Committee. It'll hopefully get a hearing in that committee soon after session starts.
Other than the delete all, are there any amendments that you've been made aware of that people might be introducing through that process?
Yeah, there's, I think, 4, what I think are GOP amendments that have been introduced. They're posted on the committee website if you want to see them. I'm not supportive of them, and I'm hopeful they won't pass. But and then there's another amendment that I introduced just to accommodate for some technical changes.
Have you spoken with Governor Walz about whether he would sign the bill or what requirements he would want in the bill?
I haven't spoken to him personally, but I've seen some quotes from him in the paper, and it sounds like he's open to it, and he certainly welcomes the discussion on the bill, which I was really glad to hear.
All right.
Okay.
Is that good for everybody? All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.